friends and makers, please welcome Arianna Williams and Marley Rae.
Hi everyone, so great to see your faces. My name is Arianna and I'm a marketing executive at United Talent Agency, and I specialize in influencer marketing and helping brands authentically reach Gen Zers through their talent partners, which is why I'm so incredibly excited to welcome Miss Marley Rae Ralph to the Makers Summit. She is a super sought after partner and collaborator in the space, so this is truly an honor. Thank you so much for being here. For those of you that don't know, Marley Rae Ralph, also known as Namaste Marley Rae online, is a 500-hour certified yoga instructor. You're a Nike Well Collective trainer, and you're also the founder and director of health and wellness at WalkGoodLA, which you've founded with your family members, right?
Yes.
I'm super curious to hear about what that process was like for you. It's, you know, incredible to start a business with your family, and I'm curious what the idea that really sparked this was and how you guys took action as a family on that.
Absolutely. So WalkGoodLA, we're a nonprofit, a 501c3. We started back in 2020. And we started after the killings of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery. And my cousin Etienne, who is a survivor of gun violence, he was shot in his leg back in, I believe it was 2015, 2016. And there was a time where we didn't think he was going to ever be able to walk again. And so when Ahmaud Arbery was shot and killed on his run, it really struck something inside of Etienne where he was like, this is a story that's too common amongst Black men. And he took it to the streets. He was like, we are gonna do a running protest. And so we started in Mid-City at LA High. We're all born and raised in LA. So we started right in our backyard at the park. And at the time, I had just gotten let go from Core Power Yoga because of the pandemic, and they let go of everybody. And I just remember being like, oh, this is something I'm so passionate about. What now? Where do I go? What do I do? And Etienne said, Marley, I want you to lead the stretches. I want you to lead the mindful portion before we go on this run around the city. And so I did. And I thought it was going to be like 20, maybe 30 people. And I got to that park, girl, there was 250 people in that park, okay?
That's right.
And I told that kid, I was like, no, I can't do it. I can't do it. And he was like, Marley, yes, you can. And so we stretched for maybe all of 10 minutes. And what we found inside of that moment is that everybody's shoulders dropped a little bit. Everybody took a second to breathe. Everybody took a second to acknowledge each other. And people even had a chance to cry. People had a chance to let go. People had a chance to just, during a time that felt so tight. And so Etienne and I, we kind of looked at each other and were like, yo, we got to come back and we got to do this. And so for 10 weeks straight, we did the running protests on Saturday. We did yoga on Sunday. And yoga went from like maybe 30 people during that first just yoga class in the park. It grew to 30, 30 grew to 50, 50 grew to 100, and one day we turned around and there was 400 people in the park.
Awesome.
And we were like, oh, we're gonna need a bigger park. So now we're at Kenneth Hahn, and we still do Breathe Good yoga in the park every first Sunday of the month, and we're about to celebrate 5 years of the nonprofit.
5 years. This summer, right, in June?
Yep,
That's
June
amazing.
13th. June 13th is
That's
our 5-year
fantastic.
anniversary.
Well, thank you so much for sharing the origin of your organization. It's incredible how through difficult times you guys were able to bring so much light and joy to the community. I think that, you know, walking and running in public spaces is a privilege that not a lot of people are afforded, and having a community that's a safe space to come together and do that is huge. So
Absolutely.
We're really curious how, as a founder, you guys have navigated the struggles that might have come up. I know that, you know, a lot of times with organizations convening in public spaces, there can be some trials and tribulations that come with that, and we're really curious how you guys have pushed through those, how you've motivated each other as family to stay resilient in maybe difficult times as you're growing from 30 to 400 people in a park. What are some things that have gotten you through that?
I think number one has been grace. Realizing that we were just a couple cousins showing up to a park to do yoga. And none of us went to school for business. None of us went to school for marketing. None of us went to, we didn't know the impact that showing up to the park was going to have. And so I think that grace has been the first thing, of allowing ourselves the time and space to learn. Allowing ourselves the time and space to fall down and make mistakes, and also reach out to the people around us. We have an amazing foundation. Our family has been rooted in love and legacy. And so we are able to lean on our support system. And then relationships with our local government has been something that has really just taken Walk Good, I think, to the next level. Having that relationship with the people who are making the changes in our backyard has helped us tremendously. But I will say that it starts with the foundation. It starts with the love. In Walk Good, well, first of all, what Walk Good means is a Jamaican euphemism. And so it means to travel safe, be well. And so when you leave the house, you say, all right, walk good. Our family's from Jamaica. And so my grandmother would always say, okay, you get back home safely, walk good. And so we keep our grandparents alive through the work that we do as well. And one thing that my grandy used to always say is, when you walk out that door, you better remember where you come from. And so we always have that familial essence behind us in anything that we do, so that no matter what, we know that we can fall down and that our family is going to pick us back up. We are the ones that we've been given to make this a little bit easier. So yeah, family for us is really the root of everything.
Absolutely. And how do you navigate as a family your growth in your entrepreneurial spirit? I know that, sometimes being in business can come with very difficult conversations, and having love at the root of everything you guys do, I'm sure, makes those more difficult conversations hard. So how do you guys navigate that? How would you give advice to anyone in the audience who might also be navigating that with close friends, family?
I hear a lot that it's difficult working with family, but I've actually had a really amazing time, and it's brought us closer. Maybe it's because what we do is rooted in health and wellness. So when one of us is going through something that is like, okay, do we need to go yoga today? Do we need to book a therapy appointment? What do we need to do? The wellness and making sure that each other are good and grounded is really number one. But ultimately being honest. Saying when we need help has been something that I have learned changes the game. Saying, you know what, I feel overwhelmed, I need help. Speaking up on that has been something that I've really learned. And creating boundaries with my family too. Saying, okay, we're working on this day, we're having family time on this day, but on this day I need me time. I just need Marley time. And they do a great job at respecting that. But working with my family has just been really the biggest joy of my life, and it's brought us a lot closer together.
That's beautiful. You spoke about a lot of different tools that I think we've heard about today, from therapy to days off to speaking up when you really need help. What are some personal wellness things that you do that keep you in your best shape, showing up and being in a space where you're able to give to others? I think especially online right now, there's a lot of health and wellness buzzwords, and it can be really difficult to cut through, but I feel like WalkGoodLA has done such a good job of cutting through that noise with actionable things. And so I'm also very personally curious what the things are that you do for yourself.
For me, it's very simple. I get my sleep. When I feel tired, I lay down, I rest. I just handle the things that I need to do. I find that a lot of my anxiety comes from just not doing the thing. And so I handle the things that I need to do. And then on my off time, I try not to be put in a box. I think a lot of times people think that if you're in the health and wellness space, you've got it all figured out. There's this preconceived notion that everything is positive all the time, but allow myself to give myself grace to just be me, to just go out on the weekends and see some friends, to just normalize my personal time without it being work 24/7. Because I will say that's one thing about being an entrepreneur, is that it's so difficult to put the work down. It's like the work seeps into our everyday lives. And so sometimes I really try to treat it like a 9 to 5. Okay, 9 a.m., I'm responding to my emails. I'm taking a lunch at 12 o'clock. Even if it's just in my own office, I'm gonna go in that kitchen and I'm going to make myself a matcha, or I'm going to eat, just making sure that I have time management, I'm getting the work done, and I'm also enjoying my life. One thing I'm passionate about is that, to your point of everything we see online and Instagram, healing is constant.
Totally.
But I really believe that we can't just heal to heal. We have to heal to live. We have to heal. We have to make mistakes. There's no L's. There's only lessons. And so I think that if you are healing, then you also have to practice going out into the world and practicing all of the tools that you've been working on through healing. But being in community, being myself, having times with my friends, that's all self-care for me, and making sure that I'm managing my time accordingly. Because those days, if I'm sending emails on a Friday night, there's something wrong with me. You know that there's something up.
Absolutely. We have heard a ton about sleep today. The girls are not sleeping, and we have really resonated with this fact, and I think it's such a great example of something that our communities are struggling with collectively and people might not be talking about as much. What are ways that you guys are able to open up lines of communication with your community to learn more about what they're struggling with and what they might, need some additional help with, and how do you then translate that to the programming that WalkGoodLA does?
Sure. Another thing my grandmother used to always say is that we don't have friends, we have family. And so we keep that line open. We keep our door open. And I think that even just setting that foundation to have the energy where people are coming to the space and they just feel comfortable already allows them to feel safe enough to say what it is. I don't even think we need to do too much prying or too many questions being asked. If you are a safe person and you're speaking with clarity and you're speaking with empathy and compassion, then people are going to feel that. And I always say nothing before your time, nothing before it's time. I never want to pressure anybody to say how they're feeling. But when they feel it, they will say it. And if they feel safe enough, they will say it. So all of our programming, whether it's a run, whether it's yoga, it's always accessible. And when we say accessible, not just accessible monetary-wise, even though, yes, it very much is, most of our programming is donation-based, but it's also extremely diverse. We have people who come out to yoga from ages 6 months to 80 years old that'll come out to yoga. We have all different types of people. So I also think that if there's a space, if we're creating a space where people can see themselves, and really this is a space for anybody who has ever felt othered. And can we just do a second and raise your hand in this room if you have ever felt othered? Okay. Raise your hand in this room if you've ever felt out of place. Okay. Raise your hand in this room if you've ever felt insecure. Okay. So if you create a space where we're allowed to feel, to know that there are other people in the room that have felt othered, insecure, or out of place, then we realize that we're not really othered at all.
Totally.
And so I think that creating those spaces for people to know, I'm not the only one struggling with this. And I'm still okay. I'm a person. I'm whole. I'm beautiful. I'm human. Even though I felt this, the person next to me probably has too. And so we do that type of accessibility to your most human state in all of our programming.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for bringing us together in that way. I think it's a really great reminder, especially for all of the founders and entrepreneurs that we have in the room, to remember that, we're all going through the same things, and that even if someone hasn't spoken up about it, they've probably experienced the same things that you have. I think for you, your organization is really rooted in wellness and health, and how do you think other founders and entrepreneurs can take the ethos of health and wellness and implement that into their organizations in a way that doesn't feel buzzy? And earlier today we heard about the systems that stop us from sleeping, that stop us from taking care of ourselves, and it was very beautifully described as these waves that we have to ride, and how do we work to make those systems more bearable and not just put all of the onus on ourselves. So what advice would you give to other founders in the room to incorporate health and wellness in a way that is really actionable and authentic?
Absolutely. I was actually at an event yesterday, and it was so cool. Janae Aiko was actually playing the sound bowls, and I had such an amazing time. But before she started playing on the sound bowls, she was talking about how every tour, every artist needs a mindful manager. And I think that's the same thing for companies too. Business is hard. Business is overwhelming. You have to have conversations that you don't really want to, and that weighs heavy on you when you have to have those conversations. Sleep schedules can be off. We stress ourselves out too much. And I think it's important to have a mindful manager. I want to see that more in companies. Somebody who is just checking up on people. Hey, did you drink enough water today? Because I know a lot of us in this room are probably dehydrated right now. Hey, did you drink enough water today? How did you sleep last night? What's going on in your personal life? That way we're actually humanizing what it is that we do, rooted in connection, and not just all about the work. Because the work is always going to be there. But is your mental health always going to be there? Is your joy always going to be there? Is your passion for what it is that you do always going to be there? And so I think there needs to be somebody, it could be a therapist, it can be a yoga instructor, it can be somebody that just kind of taps in and pulls people out of the day-to-day, just for a check-in, like, hey, what's going on? And I think what we'll find too is that our work will be a lot more efficient. I took some time for myself to just organize my space, because that's also a reflection of how our internal world is going, is if your environment is messy. I took some time to just organize my space. And the clarity that I felt in my mind when I went into my meeting the next day was out of this world. You would have thought I drank 2 Celsiuses or something, you would have thought that I was locked in. And that's the power of making sure that our minds are clear and healthy. The work is better. Absolutely. So I would say having a mindful manager. And I'll also say too that when hiring these people, it's so important to include them in your budgets. It's so important, because there's a lot of people that are spending a lot of money on these certifications, whether it be yoga teacher training or therapy, that are not cheap at all. So taking it seriously, putting them in your budget, and making sure that everybody has a sound mind and the environment is healthy and the work will be better.
Absolutely. That was so, so beautifully said. Can we take a quick moment to give a round of applause for 5 years of WalkGoodLA? This is so exciting. They are celebrating with a fantastic event this summer, which I would love to hear about. But I also am curious, 5 years under your belt, the next 5 years, what is the impact that you hope to have in the health and wellness industry, and the legacy that you guys are wanting to leave behind?
Yes, so I say walk good to the world. I say walk good everywhere. I see walk good having community centers in New York, in Jamaica, in Europe, in Chicago, wherever you name it, I could see that happening. I also just see it really being a movement and not just a moment. I see our kids in the next generation. We just had a youth retreat at our studio 2 weeks ago, and it was amazing. These kids came in from Watts, and we were able to teach them yoga. We did a panel discussion where the kids sat down on the stage and asked each other questions. So it was an amazing public speaking workshop. And then we closed it out with a sound bath. And the counselor reached out to us, and she was like, these kids would have never opened up like this just on the campus. They would have never even talked to each other like this on the campus. They would have never spent this long without their phones on the high school campus.
Totally.
And so I really see it, I see the business flourishing, but most importantly, I see a generation that is emotionally aware and is able to feel secure and confident and just bosses. I see kids just having these tools to navigate life a lot earlier on, and it really being a better world. I believe truly and deeply that the work starts with us. And at the end of all of my yoga classes, I say, okay, it's not just about this yoga mat. We're doing the work for ourselves on this yoga mat so that when we step out into the world, we're better, we're brighter, and we're helping each other and we're being kinder to one another. And so I really am passionate about the next generation and the generations to come having that outlook and having those tools to get through life.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Marley Rae, for being here at the Makers Summit. Yay. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here. I'm going to leave you for the audience Q&A, and I hope everyone has a great rest of their day.
Thank you, Arianna.
Woo!
All right, we love talking about building your own future. So we're going to bring back all of our speakers who are entrepreneurs to the stage right now to do some Q&A. All right, who in the audience has questions? Get this started. All right, go ahead.
Thank you, Grace.
Welcome back, Ty, Monique.
Thank you.
Right here in the back.
Hello, everyone. Again, it's Dr. Garcia. Question for you guys. What's the biggest risk you've taken as an entrepreneur, and what did it teach you? Not just about your business, but about yourself.
Oh,
You started.
so I don't know why this one was top of mind. I don't know if it's the biggest risk, but it's one that comes to mind. I told you when I came to Lionsgate, we had a joint venture. It was a joint venture between Lionsgate and Kevin Hart. The company was called Laugh Out Loud. And the platform, the app, it was a streaming service for comedy initially. We were supposed to launch in August. I joined in April. And pretty much a lot of the monetization and details had been baked. The business strategy was baked, and I was there to do go-to-market initially. And the P&L was sort of outside of my purview, right? And the monetization strategy was. But I had come from advertising and advised a lot of brands, and I just felt really deeply that we were going to do a subscription service app. And I just could not reconcile how a really young audience who had increasing access to free content, that we would launch immediately asking them for something. And so, at first I said, look, I'm going to develop the marketing plan and I'll be quiet. And right before we got ready to launch, it just didn't sit right with me. So I went to my bosses and at that point the board for the company and made an appeal and said, look, so I said two things. One, I'll take on monetization, right, if I'm going to make a recommendation about it. But I think we need to drop the paywall for now and really develop audience and community. And essentially, I was the throat to choke, depending on how it went. And while it wasn't my own business, it was very entrepreneurial. And ironically, the first proof of concept for that monetization became a partnership with Procter & Gamble, someone who, Monique now, who now works for Monique's brand, a guy, Omar Goff, who was over Old Spice at the time. Mm-hmm. And we said we were going to take some content out of the app and put it on YouTube, and we were going to get a sponsorship for it, and we were going to develop audience. So we launched with our first 7-figure partnership. The show, which is still now running, became one of the biggest sports shows on the internet, cold as balls. We garnered 1 million downloads in the first 100 days. Nice. And that pivot ended up leading to the evolution of the business strategy and eventually carve out and the transition to what became Heartbeat, which is like a really successful entertainment company. Why do I say that is because, I mean, it could have worked, maybe I could have lost my job, but it was really a good confirmation to trust your gut, especially when it's backed up by data and insights.
Yes. Yeah. For me, it was, I think opening a brick and mortar has definitely been the biggest risk that we've taken. Because now we're running WalkGoodLA, the nonprofit, and then also the Walk Good Yard. And we just hired 30 people. So now I'm responsible. I'm a boss, not just in like the sense of, oh, I'm a boss, you know. But I'm now, yeah, like now we have employees. And so that has been the biggest risk, opening up this space and saying, okay, how are we going to get people through the doors? But the story that's really coming up for me right now is that WalkGoodLA has been with On Running, has been our community partner for going on 3 years now. And within the second year of our contract, Nike came to me and wanted to sign me individually. And that was a big crossroads for me because I love my family and I did not want to turn on my cousins in any kind of way. So I had a lot of conversations with my cousins, and my cousin Etienne really put things in perspective for me. And he told me, Marley, you need to take this deal with Nike. Really, because anything that we do personally is going to be put back into the business. So relationships, exposure, and just experience. Being able to see how another company works, being able to see what kind of things can we implement into our own organization. And so it's really been an amazing journey with Nike, and then also we have this incredible relationship with On. And although they are competitors, it's been so cool being able to have these healthy relationships with both companies, and ultimately the word is getting out more around of what it is that we do. So it was a win-win, and having the support of my family was everything.
So I would say, I'm going to say two things. One of my biggest risks was actually leaving my nursing career and stepping out on faith to start my Yale, because it was a big risk for me, because you have to think like I came from this environment where you can't be what you don't see. And I did not see any women that looked like me that were running and operating multi-million-dollar companies. And having the pressures of family members and friends that were leaning on the side of caution and trying to get into my head and telling me, you know, you might want to continue to renew your nursing license, and you might want to like stay on your job a little bit longer before it takes off. And I had to turn off the noise and the distractions, because I told myself that God gave me this vision. He didn't give it to everyone else around me, so I can't expect them to understand my journey. So that was one of the biggest risks of just, you know, ignoring the noise and really stepping out and starting this and ignoring the naysayers. And the second thing I would say is, when we were in retail, we entered into Sally Beauty, was our first retail partner, and then we entered into Target. We got the call from Walmart, which is the biggest retailer, and we actually told Walmart no, which was a huge risk, because who tells Walmart no? But I had to understand that at that time in my company's in the timeline, we were not ready financially, infrastructure-wise, and if you get it wrong in Walmart, you're not getting another shot to get back into that store. So that was a risk of seeing all of my competitors that were around me that were entering into this store, and Mayo was the biggest disruptive brand, and telling Walmart no. Will Walmart come back around and ask for you to enter into their stores the next following year? I had to believe so much in the brand that I was building, that I'm building something so great that Walmart will come back and ask again the following year, which they did. But it was a risk of, what if they don't? And my husband, we have this saying, no risk, no story. And what I've learned about myself with taking these risks is that I've learned how to rewire my brain. because sometimes we look at risk as a threat to our nervous system. And when we're looking at it as a threat, it allows us to stifle. We stifle ourselves, and we don't open up ourselves to trust our discernment and our intuition to take more risk. So I've learned to trust in my God-given discernment, and I will tell you that I've made more business decisions with my intuition than textbook strategy, right? So as founders, I think we are just more resilient, and sometimes being a founder and not coming from experience, you know, you do things a little bit more disruptive because you don't have that knowledge and experience that textbook business strategies should tell us how we should do things. And that's why I disrupted the industry, because I didn't have that, you know, structure. I just did things in a very disruptive way, in a very risky way, as some may say. But I've learned to just trust, you know, what God has given me, and that's what I've learned about myself.
Wow.
Can I just say, though, the way that rosemary mint oil heals my
thank you.
head, you would have thought you were a nurse. You would have
Yes.
thought you were a nurse.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I appreciate that.
Absolutely.
And I just complimented you on your hair, too, how beautiful it is.
Right here in the middle, Andrea. I have a few questions for this segment.
Hi, everybody.
Oh, hi.
I'm Demira Pierre. It's nice to be in the room. Ty, it's good to see you again. So this question is for everyone, but specifically the two CEOs. One of my questions is, how did you all use your background and work in other fields? For example, you were a nurse and then your husband was an engineer, to instill investor confidence, right? We always talk about transferable skills, and sometimes people don't see the value. But can you talk about that experience and how you were able to kind of get people to say, yes, we'll do this, not only because you have this idea, but you actually are rooted in healthcare, so you have some other understanding around different industries that you brought to your entrepreneurial journey?
Yeah, no, that's a great question, and that's honestly the story that I led with when we sought out investors. I led with the science factor that, you know, I am a registered nurse, and I understood and started this brand with understanding the health and science aspect of it and creating healthier products with healthier ingredients that perform well on textured hair. I had a little bit of understanding on the chemistry about formulations, so I was able to, you know, create these products with our manufacturer and co-creation, and creating products that, you know, had the best ingredients, high quality ingredients. Like, they couldn't put anything in the products that, you know, they can get over on me, because I'm like, oh no, I know this is not going to be healthy for our skin, healthy for our scalp. And being a nurse, I felt that transferable skill that I also had was being able to connect and engage with my audience. You know, as a nurse, you know, I would go in patients' rooms and have large IV needles or give them a big pill, and they had to trust that I wasn't about to kill them. So I had to develop a rapport with my patient and develop this trust relationship where they trusted that, you know, this nurse is coming in and she has compassion and empathy, and she's actually going to take care of me. That same skill set is what I did with building my community. I led with empathy and compassion, and I really wanted people to see my passion and to not just put out a product and say, here, buy it, but I wanted people to know, like, this is something that I actually care about, and I care about serving more so than, you know, you buying the product, because I feel like all of that comes later on with that. And for my husband, with him being a project engineer, and he uses a different side of his brain than I do. So I'm a creative and visionary. He uses that operational, logistic, finance, the things that I really don't want to do because I feel like it stresses me out. And it takes away from me really focusing on the strengths that I do have. And that's what really attracted the investors, because they looked at us as this dynamic duo. Like, when you have the right brain, he has the left brain, or vice versa, whichever brain is the analytical brain. And being able to combine those skill sets together, it was a win for them, because they saw how our strengths complemented each other. And with me focusing on consumer engagement, product innovation, and him focusing on the back end and finances, that's like a winning duo in it of itself, because you need both when you are creating a brand. And that's what allowed us to be that attractive brand, in addition to the momentum and the community, the revenue, EBITDA, all of that stuff, you know, was obviously a huge factor in them investing in us, but they liked how we complemented each other's skill sets. So.
Tuesday. I think she said for the CEO.
Oh, so I guess mine was a little different because I was always in the industry in some capacity, advertising, tech, or entertainment. But I will say though, when moving from like vertical to vertical or industry to industry, there was always a bit of translation that I had to do for, well, if you were working at marketing agencies, what makes you think that you'll be successful in scaling tech platforms? Or if you're working in technology, what does that have to do with entertainment? And I've always said, and maybe this oversimplifies it, so much of what I've done in every role has been what I learned and what I thought was the least relevant role in my career. I mentioned earlier that first job out of school was I was a project manager for a UK-based marketing firm, and all of our clients were aerospace, defense, and telecom. And I ran one of our big clients' North American trade show programs. And so I was a project manager. I had to do things, manage people and make sure that projects were delivered on time, under budget, above expectation. And these projects could vary. And then the second part of that is I had to ask a lot of questions because I was dealing with, I don't even think I had ever been to Europe when I got the job. In fact, I hadn't. So I was a part of this European firm. I was working in an industry that I had no knowledge of. It was very male dominated. And I was in a satellite office. I was in DC. And so everything about raising my hand, championing for myself, being resourceful, being able to sort of like wrangle the troops, I use the same things all the time. So every time I would come into a new environment, it's like, okay, let me understand the canvas, let me understand the places, the people, let me figure out the P&L, right? And then let me ask questions of those around me who are just more knowledgeable from a subject matter expertise. I often say, one of the misconceptions about being a CEO is that you just have to have this very deep knowledge about all the things. And the truth is, you're the keeper of the vision. You're also quite often the number one salesperson. But like I was never by trade a seller, right? Like I thought of myself as a strategist. So what I would do is like root myself in that competency and have conversations with people who I would need to get investment or sponsorship from rooted in that competency. But the number one thing I was supposed to do was surround myself by people who were smarter than me in their individual areas, be a resource to them, and be able to create an environment, right, where all of those pieces could work together.
That's good.
Go ahead.
Hey, hello. So thank you. First of all, I just have to say my name's Andrea Wade, and I feel like Ty and Monique, you've been friends in my head just because I followed your journey. I mean, especially like to what you've done just in your career and with your businesses. And Marley, I'm just happy to know you and put you on my Mount Everest now too. So thank you all. This has been really powerful. So my question is, there's the saying, kind of start with the end in mind. And I feel like we hear the boys talk about it. We hear them talk about like, okay, what's your exit, or are you planning an exit or anything? So I'm just curious. Obviously, you've gone through an exit, Monique. Did you always set out? Were you thinking you were going to exit, or even like we're talking about scaling and growing your business now? How are you thinking about that in the context of like you all being founders and at different stages, and you haven't gone through it? Like, at what point did you know you were going to pursue it?
Yeah, no, that's a really great question. I'm going to be honest with you. When I started Mael, my vision was to be a global beauty brand. I didn't know exactly how to execute that vision. I didn't even know what an exit was. I didn't know anything about acquisitions. And I thought that my way of becoming a global beauty brand was to continue to just stay e-commerce and sell online. So I wanted to just be behind the scenes, and I thought I was going to build this amazing brand, and we were just going to stay online. Had no idea about going into retail, so I was very green in this space. And that's why the gift of exposure is extremely important. You know, life is the first greatest gift, exposure is the second. Lisa Price did her acquisition with Carol's daughter. That was kind of like, oh, that's great, that's nice. Still didn't really register, right? It wasn't until Rich Dennis did his acquisition with Unilever, and he sold for like, what is 1.6 billion? When you see billion, You know, you're like, oh, that's a whole nother story. Like that's really attainable for like this space. That was my eye opener for me, and that was my gift of exposure. And I had the opportunity to meet him around 20, like 15, or after he did the deal, whatever year that was. And I remember having a conversation with him, and I told him, I want to do exactly what you've done, but I want to do it even better. But I was very bold in my ask. And he didn't become my mentor right away, but we just had a very friendly relationship, you know, throughout, you know, building my company. And I remember when they made the announcement, I'm really big on journaling and vision boards, and I cut out the article, and it was a picture of him and his mom, and I told him, forgive me for this, but I put my husband and I picture over that headline, because I wanted to visualize it, and I wanted to see myself with that same headline, and I knew that it would happen one day. And when we were able to reconnect, he sold and he created new voices, and that is how this relationship circled back. And you know, he helped basically show the roadmap and show the way of like the possibilities of what I can achieve with this little idea that I had in my kitchen in 2014, creating kitchen concoctions. It was because I saw him do it that I believe that I can do it as well too. So that's why the gift of exposure is extremely important. But when I first started, I did not even know anything about exits or acquisitions.
Yeah. I still don't know anything about exits or acquisitions. So don't.
Now you do.
Now I do. I'm learning so much from this panel, okay? But what I will say is that starting with Yoga in the Park and being a nonprofit, we couldn't see, when we started, we couldn't see anything past what we were doing. We were really responding to the moment. And we couldn't see anything past COVID-19. We couldn't see anything past the protests and I Can't Breathe. We just responded to what we felt our community needed. And in that, we had these amazing women who were lawyers, and they reached out and they were like, hey, we want to help you all get your nonprofit. We want to file your 501c3 at no charge, but whatever the state fees are going to be. And so that was our first time. We didn't even think about a 501c3. So there's our community coming in right then and there. And then Michael B. Jordan and Propel Water, they saw the images that we, to your point, exposure, they saw the images that we were posting on Instagram and the numbers that we were pulling out and having so many Black and brown people take care of themselves that they're like, you know, I see that your mission is rooted in something real. It's rooted in helping people. We want to then help you. And so they actually gave us our first big grant to get our brick and mortar. And they paid for the first year of our rent. And they actually had somebody come out and look at facilities with us. So that, I think, for us was our first time where our eyes opened to what growth could really look like within a nonprofit space. I really want to shout out on our team. We have a team of 5. So it's myself, Etienne, Ivy, Jay, and Kavi, and we're all related in some type of capacity. But I really want to shout out our Director of Operations, Jay, because he has done such an amazing job at finding out what the laws are, what the ins and outs are, making sure that he's going through the contracts and working in tandem with the lawyers to make sure that everything that we do is on par, on brand, and in good standing with any partner that we work with. That has opened doors for us incredibly because there's a lot of organizations, especially nonprofits, that'll just pop up and show up and then break these relationships with people who are putting things in order. And so having somebody on our team that is extremely thorough at making sure that we're doing things by the book has been a game changer, and it's allowed for us to soar in a way that I never really thought of, truthfully, at the beginning. And then I think that the third thing too is, as you said, leaning on what your strengths are. At the beginning, when it started with just myself and my cousins, I knew that I was the one coming to teach the yoga. I'm certified in yoga, trauma-informed yoga therapy, and I'm currently in grad school getting my master's degree in yoga studies as well. So I have that knowledge. Thank you. Yeah, so I'm going into my 2nd year. But I know that I have that knowledge, and I'm continually working towards that knowledge to make sure that one, I'm giving credibility to the lineage, and two, making sure that I'm credible. I think that's super important. If you're selling something, to make sure that you are credible to hold, especially in health and wellness, because people are so tender and I see a lot of projection. So making sure that I'm knowledgeable in that space, I focus on. Etienne is insanely just talented at being able to connect with people, and so his skills and connection and people skills has gotten us to a next level. And then Ivy Coco, her skills in business and marketing has surpassed what it is that I see, the vision that I see. So we're continuously learning and growing, but I know that just based off of our skills, our talents, being open to learn, and also being rooted in our community is what gets us to that next level. So I'm super interested. I just learned that nonprofits can be franchised. So I'm super interested in now going down that route and learning more about that exit.
Yeah, no, that's great.
Yeah.
I think we have another question. There we go.
Hello. By way of intro, I'm Amita Gill. I'm not good at this, but I'm a newly minted, thank you. That's woman helping women, thank you. A newly minted PhD, so I guess Dr. Amita Gill.
Woo! Yes, doctor.
And first in my family to be, a woman leader who made it in her career, raised her family, and got that type of education. I come from a place where it wasn't really heard of, right? It was like, hey, maybe you could be a grocery store cashier. No disrespect to that, but I just thought I could do better. So I'm really glad to be here. I'm grateful. I work in corporate, and my question is more around boardrooms. So I'm not a CEO yet, but I'm a senior executive, and what I do is I work with banks and like insurance companies, and I help them make their operations better. So help them transform their operations. I'm with Cognizant, we're a partner. So I find myself in a lot of boardrooms with a lot of executives. I am usually the only woman that is there, particularly in my industry, and usually the only woman of color as well, actually almost all the time. I'm very credible. That's why I shared with you about my PhD, but very credible, lots of experience. I know my stuff. I'm probably more qualified than every single person sitting in the room, but I don't walk in acting that way. But I also don't know everything, and I can't be deep on everything. So whether it's on the analytical side, maybe there's certain parts of technology that I don't understand. I struggle to say I don't know something because I worry about what the perception's gonna be in that room. So my question for you is, how do you bring in others into areas that you may not be the strongest in, but still command that room and still be that leader? And I feel like I've heard each of you talk about it in different ways, but I would just love to hear it from each of you. How do you do that?
It's a really good question, and maybe everyone else is sort of I think the word imposter syndrome, or the phrase imposter syndrome, is probably dated and too narrow, because I don't believe any of us think we're pretending, right? And I think it is dismissive of the real bias that we often face in these environments. Like, it's generally not in your head, right? So if you feel like, you're in a room and people aren't taking you seriously, or someone slighted you, or it was dismissive, that's probably happening in real life, right? So I think one thing is, so when we talk about this idea of like, it puts kind of the onus on us sometimes to say, well, it's on me. I get in these rooms and I don't feel. And by the way, we all carry, we were talking about that backstage, every single person, every human carries some element of insecurity, and if not some element of insecurity, sort of self-consciousness, right? We are aware of ourselves and how we show up in environments, and in foreign environments, they can feel less comfortable, especially if you're just not like a naturally outgoing person. I'm not, right? Like, I thrive in like more intimate settings. And ironically, I can speak one to many, but in those rooms, like if I go to a dinner party and I don't know anyone there, I'm not my most comfortable. So I'll speak in a corner, but I'm not the person who's gonna go out and like shake everyone's hand. And regardless, it's just not in my nature. And so I think there are a couple things. One, it's like you got to be true to your nature. Like I'm just not going to pretend to be anyone else on here. I think all the women on this platform articulate in such beautiful ways, but all very differently, right? And we'd be diminishing ourselves to try to emulate each other. And I think the same thing when we go into these rooms. So one, sometimes these rooms are not great places to be, right? Sometimes they can be a little hostile. So just validating this, not in your head. The other piece is, you can't really read anyone else's script or play anyone else's role. So as much as you can bring, or as much as I can bring my own self, it doesn't mean that I won't feel any discomfort, but I feel a great degree of confidence and satisfaction in myself when I leave because I didn't pretend, right? The only disappointment is if I ever feel like I shrunk myself or I contorted myself, and it's not about what they end up thinking, because that's a transient moment, right? They really don't think about you after you leave the room. It's not that deep. But when I don't like myself, when I walk away and say, like, I wasn't my most honest self, that's concerning. And the other piece is it's just tactical about boards and advisories. They're configured for a diverse perspective. If everyone in the room has the same expertise, the same orientation, that's a real problem from a board perspective. So your uniqueness, quirkiness, the lack of subject matter expertise is often what qualifies you uniquely to be in the room. So lean on that thing that feels uniquely other. And the more we do it, and the more the world doesn't fall apart, or even if we do get embarrassed in the room and we live to tell another day, the more confidence we'll have that all will not end if we do it again.
I love that. Thank you.
Yeah, that was great.
Yes, 100%. I think also it's trusting that you are working towards the positive outcome. A lot of time we can get stuck in our egos, and while we're credible, the other person can be too. It's not about who's right or who's wrong. It's about what is the best possible outcome for this situation. And it's putting sometimes the personal feelings to the side, anything surrounding, oh, they slighted me, they did this, they did that, they had an attitude, okay. Sure, that comes with a lot of work of just being able to let some of that stuff go, and never, if it's disrespectful, I say always speak up and stand up for yourself if it ever gets there. But in conversation and in negotiation, making sure that you always know what the best possible outcome is and how to articulate that in the best way that you can. And not all the conversations are going to be sunny. Not all of them are. And it's really about doing the inner work to be okay with that too. There's times where I have to, if I have a difficult conversation at work that day, I really do have to spend time with myself that evening and meditate. I really have to learn how to breathe through those conversations. I have to learn how to really control my nervous system when having some of those more difficult conversations. Because if you're able to control yourself in those times, you'll see a huge difference in the way that people respond to you. Just in the awareness of your body and your mind and your composure, I think is important. But really knowing what is that positive outcome, and what do I think is the best way to get there. And as long as you're rooted in that, then you know that you are standing in, to your point, the authenticity.
Yeah, no. I mean, I don't have much more to add because I think that these were very profound answers. The only thing I would say is to also make sure that you are prepared, going into these meetings. I've learned that that's what's worked for me, is to make sure that I overly prepare so that I can counter or tackle any obstacle that comes my way in these meetings, because I have been in meetings where it hasn't been comfortable, right? And I do believe that you have to be your true authentic self. I am not the loudest person in any of my meetings, but my team knows, and even when I've had these board meetings, that when Monique is saying something, you better listen, because she doesn't talk much, so if she has something to say, what she has to say is very valuable information to the ultimate goal or what we're trying to accomplish. So I would just say make sure that you're overly prepared and be ready to just tackle whatever personalities or issues or obstacles may encounter during that meeting, and speak up. And I tell my daughter this too, who's getting ready to do an internship, and she's going to be working with probably some not so nice people in the world that she's going into. And I tell her, listen, don't let anyone make you feel small. Just because you're young, you are prepared, you are in this position for a reason. You know, not everyone can have this position, so God put you here for a reason, because you're gonna learn and you're gonna develop. Don't let anyone make you feel small. Always speak up for yourself, right? Even if you don't have all the answers, you can figure out how to get the answers, but know that you are qualified to be exactly where you are in that moment.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.